Greetings, everyone, and welcome. It's time for episode 7 of the second season of The Captain's Table. To recap last week's episode just a little bit, I was still on the hunt for a job, and because I had a weekend free and was uncertain about my future schedule, decided I was planning on making a trip down to my hometown to visit my mother. Well, to start right off, at the beginning of the week, that's exactly what I did. On Saturday, decided to drive all the way down to my hometown, about 250 miles to the south of me. And if you've been following any of these Captain's Table videos, you'll know that I only recently got my driver's license for the very first time. So, this marked kind of a big deal as the first arguably long-distance solo road trip that I was taking. Now, normally, it takes about 4.5 hours to drive from Seattle down to my hometown. And that's not just because of the distance. That factors in a lot of things, mostly traffic and road conditions. Sometimes the road conditions are bad from construction, and sometimes they're just bad from weather. But traffic is almost always a big factor in this drive. Somehow, some way though, I managed to make it down there in what is a personal best for me, even as a passenger, making it down in just 3 hours and 45 minutes. Which was good. It meant that I got in right about noon, which was time enough to have lunch, plan a quick meetup with a friend I haven't seen in quite some time. Was hopefully going to have dinner with him, but if I did that, then I wouldn't get to see one of my uncles, so had to scrub that plan. Did, however, go out, meet up with this buddy, had a good conversation, got caught up on the happenings of the his world, if you will. The next morning, did a similar thing, but this time had brunch or breakfast. I think it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Went out to a breakfast spot, had breakfast with another buddy of mine from high school who I haven't seen in, well, since high school. So a good 11 years nearly that I haven't seen this guy. Was good to catch up with him as well. Get to know what's going on in his life too. The trip down ultimately was pretty good. On the drive, it was good weather conditions, light traffic. Obviously, if I managed to make it in 3 hours and 45 minutes, 45 minutes faster than the normal average that I usually have experienced. The trip back, I was loaded up with all of these different things that my mom and my granny would have sent me in a care box, as well as some birthday presents for my upcoming birthday in a couple of months that my mom absolutely did not want to send through the post office because, not that she doesn't trust the post office, but mostly that she doesn't trust the post office, and to be fair, I don't trust my apartment building having things delivered here because, well, if the office isn't open, then the items probably get stolen, as has been the case in the past and for several other residents. So, loaded myself up. Once I got everything in the car that I thought I was taking with me, or that I remembered that I was taking with me anyway, I got back on the road, headed northbound, and honestly, I managed to make record time going northbound. And if it wasn't for hitting traffic and some pretty bad weather conditions right at the Tacoma Dogleg, and if you're in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle and Tacoma, you'll know the spot I'm talking about. That dogleg and I-5 right there at the Tacoma Dome, where there's almost always bad traffic. Hit a spot of stop and go, 10-mile-an-hour traffic right there. And if I hadn't hit that traffic, I probably would have made the trip in 3 hours and 30 minutes. So even faster. But because I hit that traffic, and because following that traffic, when the speeds got back up, the weather got worse. And so it was just the right density of rain to create a heavy mist. And because it was dry roads beforehand, the roads were slick, and the roads were just covered in this fine rain. So all the vehicles kicking up so much mist really made it more difficult to see, which meant you were basically going slower than you probably wanted to, or than what normally would be the case. Still, though, managed to make the trip in 4 hours, which I consider pretty reasonable. Got the vehicle unloaded and then promptly went over to my dad's house for the Oscars party. Next morning, my mother sends me a text messages and tells me that I forgot one of the items that I had come down to get, which was a tub of Legos. But not just any Legos. Specifically, it's a tub of Legos that all are for one kit. And it's actually kind of a rare kit now. And it's the UCS Star Destroyer. This thing came out well over a decade ago. Probably a decade and a half ago. And was absolutely massive. In fact, just size-wise, I think it is one of the largest kits that they've ever put out. Now, parts-wise, not too terrible. A lot of empty space in that model. But still, a big kit. And when my mom moved, we basically disassembled it as best we could, shoved it all into a tote, and then promptly forgot about it. So my mom asks me if I want my dad to pick it up and take it back with him when he's done with his visit down there. And this was news to me. Now, I had known that my dad was looking to buy a new car, and I had known that he had found one down in Oregon, in Salem, Oregon, not too far from my hometown, that he liked. Had all the features that he wanted, was in the color that he wanted, all the things. But I didn't realize that he was planning to go down to Oregon to pick it up until Monday. We didn't really time our trips very well, but that was more to do with the fact that I had to be back on Monday for an interview. His story was a little bit weird in the respect that he got on the train on Monday to make it down, and being US rail system, well, the freight train company had not one, but 2 trains derail just south of Olympia and effectively suspend all passenger travel for the day. So my dad managed to make it from Seattle to Olympia and then was stuck in Olympia for the rest of the day. He contemplated just coming back. He contemplated having me go down and pick him up and take him all the way down. So it's quite possible I could have ended up going back to my hometown in a very short order of time there. Wasn't the case, fortunately. And fortunately for me, my job interview from last week on Friday, well, I had a call back that they wanted to move forward with offering me the position. And not only did they offer me the position for full-time employment, but they offered me the position for the exact pay requirements that I wanted. They didn't reduce it at all. I said in the interview that I wanted $22 an hour when they asked me what I was looking for the position, which I figured I was kind of highballing them on. They offered it to me exactly. This makes me happy, but this also scares me just a little bit, because I kind of regret not being able to get maybe, you know, another $1 or $2 an hour. At this point, every dollar actually does really help, but $22 an hour, still more money than I was making at the last position by $1 an hour. And it's a whole hell of a lot closer than the other location. The downside is that the new position is located on Capitol Hill in Seattle. And that location basically means that no matter where I end up choosing to live, I'm going to have a miserable, miserable rush hour commute going both directions. Even if I take side streets and back roads, even if I take the bus, miserable commute, no matter which way I'm going, because Capitol Hill is conveniently located right where pretty much everybody wants to go. Now, my dad got back from his trip down to Oregon, bringing back that Lego kit. And one of the things that I was concerned about, and that my mother had pointed out, was that we seemed to have lost the instruction book for that Lego kit. However, when I got the tote, and I lifted it up and looked at the underside of it, right there, pressed against the bottom of the tote, was the entire instruction booklet, minus the front and back cover, which I have. So not only do I have the kit now, once again, but I have the original instructions, which makes it just that little bit more valuable. Bad part is, I have nowhere to put it in my apartment. Of course, even if I had the space, I wouldn't put it together right now anyway, just like with my UCS Millennium Falcon kit. I'm holding off on breaking them apart, basically, so I don't have to break them apart when I move. And it is now official that I am, once again, looking for a new place to live, as my landlord finally got around to giving me a lease renewal notice. Now, my lease is technically up at the end of this month on the 31st of March. And my landlord forgot to give me a rental increase notice on the 1st of March, like they're legally supposed to. This meant that I technically got my current lease extended through to the end of April because they forgot to give me that increase notice. Well, when they finally got around to giving me the increase notice, the increase was for $160 a month. The problem is, the current rent, the maximum they could have increased my rent in the city of Seattle with less than a 60-day notice, which at this point, that was less than 60 days, only 52 days, was $124.99. Anything more than that would be a 10% increase or more, and according to the City of Seattle renters laws, the landlord has to give you 60 days notice. So I had to come back to them and basically force them to change that. Rather than reduce my rental rate to something a bit more reasonable, they instead decided to keep it that high and just extend my current lease out through the end of May. Given that situation and the amount that the rent is going up to, I really don't even want to stay through the end of March. So I'm now actively hunting for a new, hopefully slightly cheaper or slightly better place to live. Unfortunately, I'm in a situation where, since I don't currently have an active income, getting a new apartment is going to be a little bit difficult. I think I can get away with using my offer letter to show expected income. And if push comes to shove, I think I can convince my father to co-sign for me. Should I want to move much quicker. Now going forward into next week, I've already done the paperwork for my background check, driving record check, and drug testing for my new employer. So at this point, I don't know if I'll be starting my new job next week, but I do know that in the offer letter that was presented to me, they wanted me by the 20th of March. It's a Tuesday, if not before. So we will see what comes of it. I'm either going to end up with another week off, which is really, not good for me, financially speaking, even with unemployment, because Washington unemployment didn't bother to pay me the first 2 weeks, and I don't know if I'm going to get paid for these next 2 weeks, even though I now have a start date. But either way, I'll figure something out in the long run, in the short term. If I end up with an extra week off, well, I might just go visit some other friends of mine. And if I don't, well, you'll hear about it in next week's episode of the Captain's Table. In gaming-related news to finish off this week's episode, the game that you'll see playing, and that you have seen me play a few times here on these Captain's Tables videos, is called RimWorld. Now, RimWorld is effectively an open-ended survival base builder manager game. You start with a set of something. You're either tribal people, you're some escape pod survivors, or you're just a rich git who decides to go off in the wilderness alone with all your supplies. And your job, well, your goal is to basically just build a base and survive. But the game has an end goal to it. And the end goal of RimWorld is to be able to collect all of the necessary resources to build a ship. And that ship includes an AI ship core, at least one cryo-sleep casket, a ship's spine that you attach everything to, a power plant, and some engines. And these things are pretty expensive to make, and it takes a long time to do it because you're not able to buy certain items. You either have to go find them, or you have to manufacture your own. Well, I finally managed to beat RimWorld. That's right, I managed to beat what is effectively an open-ended, continuous survival base builder game. And I got off the planet. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode, folks. If you got a comment, let me know down in the comment section. Please do leave that. Hit that like button if you like the video. I'll keep making more of them. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.